republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Do I have any public comment from the board?
Just a quick thank you to Ms. Sharon McCullough's civics class, who I was very privileged to give a seminar here at Town Hall at 11 o'clock. So I want to thank them for attending and for their good questions and for listening and being prepared to talk about, you know, town government and how it works and how they can work in it. And so it was really good time, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak with them. So thank you to Ms. McCullough and her class.
Want to announce the Historical Society is opening the second Saturday of each month, starting in February from 1 to 3, plus their normal hours from 9 to 12 on Wednesdays.
I would like to mention that I attended a cost-effective stormwater solutions workshop at WPI back in November, and I thought it was very informative. Pieces of it were videotaped and are in the process of being edited for broadcasting. Ed Himlam's Manusnock Brook talk from the conference is about 30 minutes long and has been obtained from Leominster TV by Lunenburg PAC and will air Sunday at 8 p.m., Saturday at 7:30, Tuesday at 10 a.m., and Thursday at noon. It's also been put up on YouTube. Type Lunenburg Access and then Manusnock Brook Renewal. We'll get the remaining presentations up as soon as they become available. So thanks to Leominster TV and those folks for editing it. I checked with Dave Berthiaume, and he's still planning to have the monthly pancake breakfast at the Eagle House tomorrow. They're all set up for it, but who knows with the weather, but they are set up and planning to do it. The superintendent asked me to mention that the school committee is seeking public input on naming the school for grades 3 through 5. Cherokee Hill Middle School will become a school for grades 3 through 5 next fall. 3 names were proposed at the last school committee meeting, and they are Lunenburg Elementary, Cherokee Hill Elementary, and Oak Ave Elementary. Our residents can submit their choice in writing by Tuesday, March 1st. They can send it to Liz Peterson over at the school. There's information on the town website, and I heard that they have things on their Facebook and Twitter accounts as well. The school committee sincerely hopes the community responds so that this school bears a name chosen by its citizens.
And I can attest that it is on their Facebook page.
Great. Okay. Any public comment from the public?
Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Mr. Rogers.
I'm here to report that we're making some progress. I did some checking, and the school building committee has submitted 3 months minutes, which is a positive thing, and I'm happy to see that. So I thank the people for responding to that. I do, however, have a concern with another committee, and I'm sorry, but it's the committee that you chair, Mr. Chairman. It's the Building Reuse Committee. I did some checking on that as well, and there's been 10 meetings over 8 months, and there have not been any submissions of minutes. So I'm sure it's a thing that will be taken care of, because it needs to be, to make sure that folks...
I will look into that. The minutes
Thanks.
have been written and approved, and I guess they just haven't been submitted.
Okay. Just to refresh everybody's memory, the town bylaw is very specific. 2 weeks after the minutes have been approved, they must be presented to the town clerk's office. So I would take that. I'm curious as to what the status of the contract negotiations are with the firemen, and wondered if any headway has been made. It seems like this has been going on for quite some time, and I was just curious as to what's the status there.
The negotiations are still ongoing. The next meeting is scheduled for, I believe, a week from Monday. and that we're hoping to conclude negotiations. But I would agree, they've been going on for an excessive period of time.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you. I appreciate that.
If I may, Mr. Chair, only because Mr. Rogers is here, I know that the chair of the school building committee was looking for contact information for you. I don't know if they contacted you, because we wanted to invite you tomorrow for the walkthrough of the school. I don't know if the chair has gotten in touch with you.
He did. I was out of town today, and he left a voicemail message, and I have to get back to him. I'm not sure that I can make it tomorrow because of my schedule and some appointments, but I certainly appreciate the opportunity to go and take a look at it. And if I can't do it tomorrow, I'll do it some other time, but I'll be sure to get back to him.
Okay,
Thanks.
excellent. Thank you.
He even said that my good friend Dick Beardmore would pick me up. I guess it's getting better than that, right?
There you go.
It's the ride-sharing program.
Driving Miss Daisy.
Okay. In the order of current business, our first item of business is a request for ambulance fees abatement for $817.46.
So this is a request that was received by the fire chief. You have an abatement policy that was accepted a number of years ago. A copy of it is in your packet. This application is complete and has been determined by the fire chief to meet the requirements of your abatement policy.
I would make a motion that we approve the abatement in the amount of $817.46.
I would second.
I just have a question about the time, only because the information was provided to us and I know the policy, but there are some timesheets given to us? Is that the person's timesheet? What exactly are we looking at?
I read that to be the documentation of the person's eligibility to be considered under the
Because of the
policy,
letter
'cause they were-
stating they're out of work?
Right.
Okay, fine. All right.
I don't know if
figured
that's
that,
correct, but
it's
that's-
not clear.
Yeah.
All right.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it looks like it's either from a current or former employer showing no time
Sure.
recorded, yeah.
Thank you.
And just for clarification, we received the documentation to review, but not any personal information on the individual.
Right.
Okay. I have a motion that's been seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Second item, the toll booth fundraiser policy amendment.
Well, for clarity, Mr. Chair, I think we should call this the form amendment because the policy has never been formally adopted and we need to bring that forward, but certainly we're making it clear on the form what the intention of the policy is until that policy is finally accepted.
Fine. By way of, I do know, I want to make one statement. I know Mr. McDonald, who has represented the Salvation Army at several of these boot drives, wanted to be here this evening and wasn't able to. I just wanted to make a comment. I know that one of the concerns and one of the things that we're looking at as part of this form is handing out any advertising as part of a fundraiser, and I don't think the policy is aimed specifically at the Salvation Army, but I did want to make a point. There were two factors that prompted that, and I do participate helping Dave on that boot drive. One is that townspeople have indicated, and our policy, when we discussed our policy, we have said we thought it was a good idea that we somehow give contributors something to be able to put in their windshield or show if they're running errands around town to kind of show that I've already given the last 3 times I went through the intersection. And on some boot drives, that would be a sticker that thanks them. And around the holidays, we've even given out candy canes, etc. And number one, in the spirit of that was one of the reasons that an advertisement was handed out. The other reason was that, at least in the case of the Salvation Army, they are always looking for people to sponsor and help with the boot drives. And that particular advertiser provided for people to work the corner and be part of the boot drive, and felt they were giving a discount coupon as something to thank people for making their contribution. In the past, we have given out coupons for Macy's and for the Olive Garden, and nobody had a nobody had a concern. But it clearly was understood that probably wasn't appropriate and it won't be done in the future and there's no problem. But I just wanted to clarify that it was more of a well-intentioned effort that they now recognize is inappropriate.
Appreciate the explanation. Yep.
I have a question. Let's say the Boys and Girls Club was doing one of those drives, and they had a card of thank you on one side, and then they had several people that had given, several $100s each or something like that. Could you thank those sponsors, or would that be appropriate? You know what I mean? If you, listen, if you give us $500, we'll...
As someone on the board of Boys and Girls Club Board of Directors, I would say, as one person, I would not want to do that because it looks like a quid pro quo. It looks like I'll help you if you advertise for me, and then that's not what a boot drive is about.
Okay.
So I wouldn't want to do that.
And I would agree. I think that when you get the little paper from the Lions thanking you, and you can put that in your windshield or a sticker, or it's just a note that, to show that you've already given, and,
Right.
But when you get to the point where you're advertising particular businesses, whether it be through a coupon or a thank you, or I think that could be a conflict.
And since they are using public ways, we don't want to look like we're endorsing or not endorsing anybody at that point.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
Should I have a motion to amend this form?
So moved.
Second?
Any
Second.
further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Okay, our third agenda item talks to one of our Board of Selectmen goals, and it's the pavement management program. And at the suggestion of the town manager, I'm going to recommend that we conclude our normal business this evening and then handle that in a workshop session, just because it kind of lends itself better to that format if there's no objection from the board.
Okay.
Nope.
Okay. Minutes, I didn't see any in the folder.
There were minutes sent out.
There was some that was sent around in email today, I thought, but I don't think there's any.
Oh, I didn't see him today.
Okay. No, next week.
Okay. Warrants? Accounts payable?
That's payroll.
Payroll?
Oh, no, it's payroll.
Okay, accounts payable, $430,263.65. Accounts payable, $244,789.21. And payroll in the amount of $688,187.05. Are there any action file issues? Any committee reports? Mr. Evasol.
Sewer Commission is meeting tonight, and I've reported on all the other boards.
Gonzo.
School Building Committee meets tomorrow. There'll be a walkthrough of the building first, and then there'll be a meeting. It will be recorded. We could not get this space for a live broadcast, but it'll be recorded for future broadcast. And the Finance Committee meets on Thursday here, and the Cable Advisory meets at the end of the month.
Ms. Bertram.
The Conservation Commission met on the 6th. It was a very long meeting. It was well after 11 o'clock. There were a number of hearings relative to routine filings. The biggest item on the agenda was the 357 Electric Avenue, which is the proposal by Unitil for a new 45,000 square foot facility. There was a lot of discussion about the actual plan, the stormwater flow, the impact to the wetlands, the storage of equipment, the storage of transformers, and the potential impact on wetlands, as well as the storage of utility poles. And that hearing was continued to next week. And the engineer submitted a lot of information. There was a relatively new proposal to do something. One of the biggest concerns is the impact of the potential oil or contaminants or pesticides that are in telephone poles into the wetlands that was brought up at the Conservation Commission meeting. And that there was some information submitted, and the Conservation Commission took it under advisement with the intent to develop a list of questions to forward it to the engineer prior to the hearing on Wednesday. At last night's planning meeting, there was some new technology that was presented to the planning board relative to the same plan, which is called a pent-up plug or barrier that is used to, it's a substance that's put into the outflow pipe, and if it is in contact with oil, it basically swells and stops any water flow from impacting the wetlands. So based on the Conservation Commission hearings, that apparently the engineer heard that and has now incorporated that into their design, and that was presented to the planning board last night. There was a lot of discussion at the planning board meeting relative to the plan on the same types of issues. And the hearing on that project was continued by the planning board to February 22nd. Because they're awaiting some additional revisions to plans, et cetera, and the planning board asked when they thought they'd have all those revised plans done, so it was continued to the 22nd. Highfield Village was also on the planning board last night, and yet again, that was continued to February 8th for additional revised plans. And I will say there were a number of residents in the audience that were there for that hearing. And although they didn't say anything, it was apparent that they were frustrated with not being heard again. And there was a recommendation by Mr. Allison on the planning board that moving forward, if it's known ahead of time that a hearing is going to be continued, awaiting revised plans, that be somehow published so people will know that ahead of time. Unfortunately, the individual sat there for well over an hour only to be told that it was going to be continued. So the woman sitting next to me was very apparently frustrated, and I think probably rightfully so. So, hopefully the planning board will address that moving forward. So even if it's announced at the beginning of the meeting, so that they don't sit there through many, many hearings.
But they could post it online, right?
Right, and that was what was talked about. So hopefully
Or you
moving
could at
forward,
least,
they will do
instead
that.
of having somebody sit for an hour, you
Announce it at the
could just
beginning.
announce it at the beginning of the meeting.
Right.
So, all right, people have come, but they didn't have to sit an hour waiting for that.
Right. So those are my updates. The biggest project under both agendas was the Unitil project.
Before Mrs. Luck goes, I want to just say that for the school building committee tomorrow, we did receive the decision, an opinion from bond counsel about the issues that were talked about over the last few meetings on the Board of Selectmen meetings, and that will be one of the prime agenda topics. So we did receive that, and it will be discussed.
Okay, and one other thing, the MPO meeting is tomorrow.
Ms. Luck?
There will be a MART advisory meeting on January 26th in the morning. The Stormwater Task Force will hold their initial meeting right here tomorrow night, and it will be broadcast live. At the school committee meeting last week, the superintendent presented a budget which is $312,600 over target, and they will meet again next week.
Okay. The Building Reuse Committee will meet this coming Friday morning at 7:30, which was the only time we could find that everybody was available. And the purpose of that is to go over the final presentation that is due to this body, the Board of Selectmen. I'm going to recommend, and I would appreciate feedback from this board, that due to the fact that it was originally planned for the 19th, but due to the fact that the School Building Committee is going to be with us on the 19th, and I think both of them are pretty meaty topics, I might suggest that we hold off on building reuse one meeting. It would give building reuse a chance to polish up our presentation, but it also would give both of those important topics a full hearing, if that's all right.
That
I
makes
personally
sense.
wouldn't want to rush through either of those two topics,
Exactly.
so I think that's fine.
Right.
Okay, fine.
Good idea.
The capital planning meeting the planning group met this afternoon. We have now reviewed all requests and we'll spend the next two meetings working on the prioritization and discussions and trade-offs that we make, and we'll be presenting to the Finance Committee on the 28th at the normal Finance Committee meeting on the 28th. Any town manager or department reports?
I I see that we also have a warrant for the state primary that I didn't see in the pile originally, so this should be also approved by the board under your warrant section. And I have an announcement from the town clerk. Absentee ballots are now available in the town clerk's office for the February 2nd special primary election for Precinct B voters only. The last day to register to vote for this election is Wednesday, January 13, 2016, at the town clerk's office in the Town Hall, 17 Main Street, Lunenburg. The office will be open from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. on that day. Any questions should be directed to the town clerk's office, 978-582-4130.
Mr. Chair? Through
Mr.
you to the
Lanza.
town manager, this is the only for Precinct B, because this is the replacement for State Representative Di Natale, who is now mayor of Fitchburg, is that correct?
That's correct.
This is not the presidential primary.
This is not the presidential primary. The only other item I wanted to note is that the fire department has received fire safety and education grants from the state for the student awareness of fire education, or the SAFE program, in the amount of $4,237, and also for the senior SAFE program in the amount of $2,716. These grants provide funding for our personnel to conduct educational programs with primary school-age children and with seniors. The grants also support related educational materials for the programs. Special thanks to Captain Jim Reese and Lieutenant Mark Bursch for their work on both of the grants and the programs supported by the grants. And that's it for me.
Okay. So before we take a short recess and move over to our workshop format, and we will do that off the air, are there any final public comments from the public? Any final public comments from the board?
I do have one question. I thought we were going to be addressing, and I assume it's going to be next week then, the Conservation Commission question?
I can mention that. We probably should have listed it on the agenda and asked for it to be continued. This board had asked that town council provide an opinion on the 10% rule, and I'm still awaiting that opinion. Unfortunately, town council is preparing for the O'Brien suit next week, and that's where his attentions are, so that issue was not addressed this week.
So, will it be, we don't know if it'll be addressed at next meeting either.
Well, I'm going to push for it. It's a big firm. Somebody else can take it up. We asked for it a couple of weeks ago. I think, if it's not on next week's agenda, then we're into February. So I think we need to have a short business meeting before the joint meeting with the School Business Committee next week to address that, and maybe a couple of other items.
And I know the Conservation Commission is wondering when it's going to be scheduled, so if we could let them know, that came up at last week's meeting, is they thought it was going to be on tonight's agenda and was surprised that it wasn't, so.
We've talked to, I talked to the agent today, and Elaine talked to at least one of the members as well. Certainly the vice chair was one of the people that inquired today.
So, Jamie, your meeting with us will be February 2nd then?
Building reuse?
Yes. Unless, for some strange reason, we decide on the 19th we have to add the last week of the month, but there's no expectation that we would do that. Okay? All right, so I would suggest we take a 5-minute recess. The meeting still is open. It still is public, but we're just going to sign off the air so that we can work in a workshop format. This topic is just more conducive to that. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
See you next week.
Tom, did you say that